here. Buccaneers versus Lions, who advances to the NFC title. You can check out our other NFC video on the Niners and Packers and our AFC video on the Ravens Texans if you're a fan of those teams. But looking at this game, Baker Mayfield is replacing Tom Brady. The Buccaneers are the only other team outside of the Bills that's kept their 5 starters on the offensive line, kept the same exact offensive line combination all season. Mike Evans, Godwin, and Trey Palmer are the top 3. Now, Chris Godwin did not practice Thursday or Friday. He was a limited practice on Friday. He is questionable to play. If Godwin is out, that means Trey Palmer would be the number 2. David Moore would be the number 3. And Raheem Jarrett, who you like coming out of Maryland, would be the number 4. Cade Otton's the number 1 tight end. I mean, Keith showed some promise as a rookie, 2022 6th-round pick, but he's been a little bit more in a limited role. You also have David Wells and Payne Durham as tight ends for depth. I think the Buccaneers have more tight end depth than the Lions. Rashad White, Chase Edmonds is expected to be activated off of IR, so he would be the number 2. Keyshawn Vaughn, you have Sean Tucker, but White's been the bell cow for Tampa the last few weeks. Tampa Bay is going to have to win this game with their defensive line, but they have 2 guys on this line, Vita Vea and Cansey, that can command triple teams at any given moment. You also have Logan Hall as your starting 34 right end. You have Greg Gaines as the backup 34 right end and 34 nose tackle if Hall or Vea gets fatigued, and Golston's your backup 34 left end. Shaq Barrett and Yaya Diaby are the projected starters. Levante David and Devin White are the projected middle linebackers. Anthony Nelson's the backup 34 right outside linebacker. Joe Tryon's the backup 34 left outside linebacker after being Tampa's 2021 first-round pick. KJ Britt and Servacha Dennis are the backup middle linebackers. And you got Barrett, Diaby. Barrett and Diaby didn't practice on Wednesday. Barrett did not practice on Thursday. He did practice on Friday in a limited capacity. But if Shaq Barrett is out, Tampa Bay, the only way they're going to win this game is if the defensive line with Vita Vea and Cansey just dominates Detroit's interior offensive line. Like, that's literally the only way, because Tampa Bay is a team that has a lot of star power on their defense when they have 0 injuries. But as soon as one guy gets injured, if it's a big player like a Vita Vea or Cansey or Winfield or Levante David or Shaq Barrett, boom, there goes the dynamite in Tampa. But, the secondary looks healthy. And you got Ryan Neal at strong safety and free safety. So, just looking at where Tampa's at, I think they're in an interesting situation here heading into Detroit with arguably the healthiest team in the entire NFC. Just type some code, reload the page. I'll break down the Lions. Goff, stronger offensive line than last year. His offensive line's healthy. You do have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Josh Reynolds in the slot. You have Donovan Peoples-Jones for depth. You have Laporta as your tight end, Brock Wright and James Mitchell, tight end depth. And, Sam Laporta ended up playing. You have Montgomery and Gibbs. Both of those running backs can rotate. You have Craig Reynolds as a third-string running back. Jason Cabinda did return in a limited capacity despite still being off IR, but then they moved him to their practice squad. Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Pascal, you have Romeo Okwara and John Kaminsky as the backups. Charles Harris, James Houston, the fourth, is expected to be activated off of IR this week. So James Houston, the fourth, had 7.5 sacks as a rookie next to Hutchinson. He will be back most of this year with an injury, but he will be back. Ali McNeil and Benito Jones are starting. You have Isaiah with the Lions ended up releasing Isaiah Buggs. You have Onzaworke and Broderick Barton as the backups. And you have Anzalone at the will, Derek Barnes at the mic. Jack Campbell's moved to left outside linebacker, and Sam following a hot start. You have Reeves Maben for depth, Malcolm Rodriguez for depth. I do think the Lions have a lot of depth at linebacker. If Jerry Jacobs was playing, the Lions would feel like a shoo-in to win. But Kindle Vildor, who lost a nickel cornerback job to two rookies on the Bears, has been starting these last two games for the Lions. You have Branch still at nickel, Will Harris at dime, and Stephen Gilmore, the younger brother of Stephon Gilmore, ended up beating out Chase Lucas for that quarter cornerback job despite going undrafted. Khalil Dorsey, who is the number 6 corner. You also have C.J. Gardner-Johnson back at strong safety with Kirby Joseph. You have Ifatu Melifonwu, Tracy Walker. Lions just have so much depth at safety. It's not even funny. They have 4 legitimate starters at safety. You have Michael Bagley replacing Riley Patterson. The referee in this game is Bill Vinovich. And the crazy thing is, Bill Vinovich doesn't have a bias towards the Buccaneers or the Lions, even though he's made a lot of controversial calls in the playoffs over the years. As crazy as it sounds, Joey, I think this is probably going to be the fairest officiated game because you look at the Ravens with John Hussey, John Hussey penalized the Texans 10 times for 70 yards. You look at the Niners with Alex Kemp. The Niners have won their last 4 in a row by Kemp. You look at Sean Hockley at the Chiefs. The Chiefs have won their last 4 in a row by Hockley, and the Bills are among the top 3 most penalized teams under Sean Hockley. So those games appear to be one-sided as far as the officiating goes, but Vinovich, even though he's gotten a lot of criticism over the years, and rightfully so, this feels like the fairest officiated game on paper. So, which is why this could be where we see an upset. I do have the Lions winning, but I think it's going to be a field goal game. I think this should have been a 3.5, 3-point spread, not 6.5. I'm going 24-21 Lions. And believe it or not, you were the only member of Draft Utopia who took the Buccaneers. Everybody else took the Lions. I think Tony Mario took the Buccaneers too. And if somebody resigned, Tony Mario would get their spot. If a second person resigned, we'd add Kevin Green. But Tony Mario and Kevin Green do email me their picks each week. So outside of Tony Mario, who's actually picking the Buccaneers to win, you were the only person on the site of 11 that's got the Bucs winning. If you would
and here's the thing. Last week, Baker Mayfield surprised me because he's been banged up the last few weeks, and he's generally played poorly while injured. And he played really well last week. So this is one week where he's going to be healthier, and the Bucs still have those receivers, at least until they lose. You know, they have a really nice defense, even with the injury. Their offensive line played really well last week. The Bucs are just playing really good ball right now, and their running game is doing pretty well in itself, and that's something that I was not expecting to happen last week against the opponents that they were playing. So, put all that together, and if Baker and that offense can keep going like they were, and a big part of Detroit's success last week was Amara St. Brown making big catches, which I think the defense of the Bucs could do a nice job of cutting down on that. And their running game, which was a lot better than a lot of people give credit for, if they can limit that a little bit, maybe not take it away, but just limit it, comparison to last week, I think the Bucs come out of this with a 3-point win.
Yeah, and I'm just comparing the QBs really quickly. Baker Mayfield had 3 games with 300 total yards and no interceptions. I'm just curious what Goff had on the year, because I think it's an interesting stat. Okay, so Goff had one 300-yard game against Tampa Bay, 353 yards. Week 6, that was his first 300-yard game. But back in Week 6, both Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean were dealing with injuries. Both corners are healthy heading into this game. The Chargers, The Packers on Thanksgiving. Yeah, Goff had 300 yards against the Packers in a loss on Thanksgiving. And the Vikings. So Goff has 4 games where he's exceeded 300 yards and had 0 interceptions. Baker has 3. But I was just curious for comparison purposes. I'm not saying Baker can't be the guy this week. He could easily be the guy because in week 6, Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean were both dealing with injuries. They played through injuries that week. Detroit, on the other hand, was fully healthy at corner. Now, the Lions are fully healthy at safety now, but Jerry Jacobs out of the lineup, Kendall Vildor now in the lineup. That definitely gives the Buccaneers an advantage if Godwin and Evans both play. But if Evans is out, or Godwin's out, and Evans is playing, they're going to be reliant on Evans getting one-on-ones with Vildor. That's going to be how you have to move the needle if you're Baker and you want to pull the upset. Because I think the Lions have a little bit more safety depth. But again, even if the Lions lose this game, they would still be my favorite for Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans next year at this point, because they've still got a lot of guys in rookie deals. Baker, it just feels like the Buccaneers are going all in, trying to double up at the craps table. And with 3 guys in contract years like Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Antoine Winfield, they're only going to have the luxury of bringing back 2. But, I think this is the fairest game. As far as the officiating goes, I think this will be the fairest game. I've got the Lions 24-21. Just curious what your score is, Joey, and then we'll get to the final game.
I think 24-21 sounds pretty good, except for we're going to go 24-21 in favor of the Bucs.
I've got the Lions at 24 and the Bucs at 21. So we've got the same score. We just have different teams winning. All right. That's fair enough. So, yeah. Show you guys who everyone else on our staff picked the Lions outside of Joey. So, yeah, that's game number 3. And final game is Bills-Chiefs. We had Josh Allen on the cover. So, we'll show you guys that next.